Welcome to the Lucidez podcast, where I explore everything because I believe everything is connected to everything else. I want to do a short little bit on the doorway of pain. So it came up yesterday. I started with a new therapist since my old one retired. And as we were speaking about something, he said, he said something to the effect of, oftentimes our greatest growth is through the doorway of pain. And he said it in such a way that it was kind of like the only way. And I said, well, actually, I would like to say a little bit more on that. I said, I believe the initial doorway to much of our growth is pain. It's almost like it takes pain to get our attention. I said, but then I feel like we have other options, that there are other doorways of learning. And I've been thinking about that since then. And I wanted to share some thoughts about that. So I just finished meditating this morning and it came up during my meditation and I remembered something from a while ago. So first let's start with the initial doorway of pain. I think we find ourselves in situations in life where the only way to get out is through a doorway that is filled with so much pain. And that pain is there to get our attention and to say, look, and there's many things to be looked at. One is, how did you get here? And do you want to come this way again? That's the first one. The second one is just, I think there's also learning to experience pain and understand what the sensation of pain is in the body, in the mind, in the heart, in the spirit. And then there's also, I think the doorway of pain also asks us to, or gives us the opportunity to look at our belief systems. Okay, so we go through that initial doorway of pain, we experience a lot of pain. Hopefully there's also growth and learning that accompanies it. Sometimes we have to walk through it a few times before we start to learn that we don't actually have to come this way again, that there are other options. So let's talk about that. So we've been through a doorway of pain a few times. We can tell, we're sort of finding ourselves back toward that doorway and we're like, no, wait, I know where that leads and I don't want to go there. I'm not going to go there. So what are my other options? We look around and we see, okay, here's 3 doors right here. One of them says impossible, one says challenging, and one says difficult. Okay, well, let's try the impossible one just to see, because we know where the pain doorway leads. So let's just try the impossible. So we try the impossible. Let's say it takes us away. Wonderful. Okay, well, let's say it doesn't take us away. We try the impossible, it doesn't work. And we find ourselves back. Only this time we have a doorway of challenge, a doorway of difficulty, and a doorway of pain. Let's try the challenge doorway. We try the challenge doorway. If it leads us away, great. If it doesn't, we go through the challenge, we learn, we try, and then we find ourselves back in the doorway of difficulty, in the doorway of pain. Okay? We try the doorway of difficulty. We try something very difficult. It works, great, off we go. It doesn't work. Okay, so we go through the difficult thing and we find ourselves back at the doorway of pain. So it's like, okay, and we realize we do have to go through the doorway of pain. There is no other way again. But what I want to say is the fact that I have experienced that the fact that I recognized that there was the doorway of pain again, and I looked and I stopped and I looked around and I saw that there were these other options. And I tried these other options. One, I have found that sometimes those options work and they lead me away from the doorway of pain, and I didn't have to go through that doorway of pain. Okay, sometimes I can't say they failed because I did them and I learned and I grew and I changed, even though I was left at the doorway of pain anyway. But by the time I had gone through these other doorways, I went through the impossible doorway, and then I went through the challenging doorway, And then I went through the difficulty doorway and I was still left at the doorway of pain. But those other experiences somehow have altered the doorway of pain. It's softened it or it's transformed it. And so when I still need to go through the doorway of pain, because I had recognized it early on and I had tried other things, going through that doorway again is not as bad. And that's oftentimes when I've sort of tried other doors and still found myself at the doorway of pain, I have found that it's less painful and more reflective in the way that I'm able to look more closely at why I'm experiencing it as pain, why this experience is one of pain. And sometimes the answer is just that it just is. It just is. Sometimes the answer is, well, that's an interesting belief system that I have around this, and that belief system is causing me a lot of pain. So I want to give a specific example about a doorway of pain and a belief system. We need to go way back. We're going to go way back to when I had just ended a relationship with a man that was sociopathic in nature, and I had found out that he had been sleeping with quite a few different people, cheating, lying, all that. And it happened while I was in Hawaii, and I had just found out like a few days before, left the relationship. And I'm walking along the beach. It was a perfect blustery, windy day. Like it was on a beach. Like it's how I felt inside. And there happened to be one other woman on the beach. And I don't really know how, but we crossed near enough to each other that we acknowledged each other. And then we slowly started talking. And I briefly shared, what had just happened in my life. And I was filled with so much pain and so much anger and just rage and and I remember in that moment feeling lucky because this woman could meet me stride for stride, so to speak. She's like, yes, this happened to me, and the rage and the anger and the pain. And I was like, wow, this same thing happened to this woman, and we're just in the same place. And then at some point I said, well, when did this happen to you? And her answer was 22 years ago. And I remember that hit me in the chest like a thunderbolt. I was like, oh my God. It's happened to me 2 days ago, and it happened to her 22 years ago. And we're talking about it in the same way. And that's when I realized that was the moment where I thought, I'm walking through a doorway of pain. And if I don't learn some lessons here, I will literally get stuck in this doorway. I could be in this doorway for the rest of my life. And sadly, I think my mom got stuck in quite a few doorways. She was a person who had a lot of pain and a lot of rage in her. And that's a dangerous place to be, because you can't really be a safe, trusting person when you're stuck in rage and pain. Because there's such reactive emotions. Okay, so back to this moment where I realized I could get stuck in this doorway of pain, because I'm staring at a woman who has been stuck there for 22 years. So that's when I first started my journey with forgiveness, which was good because I needed that with both my parents. But so I started looking into forgiveness. And how was I going to move through this doorway of pain? How was I going to, not carry this with me, this rage and this pain? So as I looked into it, obviously, infidelity is a huge issue, and a lot of people have experienced it on both sides. And so there was plenty to read. And I remember there was one website, I don't remember, like I said, this was almost 20 years ago. But there was this one specific website where people were able to share their stories of it and how they had come to forgive. And so I read so many stories. I mean, I must have read at least 100 stories of what had happened, and it was every type imaginable of infidelity and every type of forgiveness. Some happened quite easily, some took a long time, blah, 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 blah. But I remember what really stuck out to me were there were a few people who did not experience infidelity with pain. They experienced loss, they experienced grief, and those people were fascinating to me. And I realized that they were my most powerful teachers, even though at the time I wasn't able to learn from them. I was too far away from them. I was very much stuck in the, what did I do wrong? Why is this my fault? Da 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 da. And what I saw in their stories, when they found out about the infidelity, their first thought, so this is they're basically showing you, their first thought is showing you their belief structure. Their first thought was, I wonder why that person, I wonder why my husband, I wonder why my wife, I wonder why my partner chose to do that. I wonder what they needed. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like that's a possible reaction to infidelity, because mine was, what did I do wrong? What is wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? I was definitely in the, everything's wrong with me. I'm the victim. Look what happened to me. And I was like, oh my God, like for real, like this person is like, wow, I wonder why they chose this. Like what is going on inside of them that they would make such a terrible decision. And it wasn't that they weren't fine with it. Like, they were like, I don't want to stay with this person. I didn't stay with this person. I don't want to be with this person. They're so sad that it's over and that it ended this way. So it wasn't a Pollyanna response, but there wasn't the pain of taking it personally or taking responsibility, because they didn't make the decision, where I very much was taking it personally and taking responsibility, which is interesting because I can see I've done that many times in my life. But anyway, so glad that I'm seeing it and I don't do it anymore, or I don't do it as much anymore. So I believe those doorways of pain can also show us our belief structure. And that was the beginning of me when I'm going to walk through a doorway of pain. I try to, I try to get through it, so that I don't want to, because you can get stuck in them. And two, I try to make sure I don't rush through and look around and reflect on what is the belief that is causing me so much pain right now. I don't think you get through life without loss, without grief, without sorrow, and there may be like physical, emotional pain. There may be lots of sensations. I don't think there needs to be I believe, I have experienced, you do not need to be in mental pain. That is simply showing you there's a construct in your brain that you have somehow set up life, your belief systems that are causing you a lot of pain. So all of all of today is just a chance for me, ever since that first session last night, it's just been a chance for me to consider where there are doorways of pain in my life right now. And we talked about one of them with my therapist. And what is it in that doorway? Because it's one I've been through a few times, and it's not so painful that I'm okay to go through it, sort of. But it's given me a chance to look at the doorway and consider what is the belief system that's causing pain around that. Meaning, as we talked about it last night, I could see that again, the big thing was I was taking the other person's behavior personally, instead of, even though I've seen this person behave pretty shitty with a lot of people, but I still sort of take it personally. And I realized, I was like, if I don't take this person's actions towards me personally, they're really, what I found was compassion. I was like, wow, they must really kind of not be doing well inside if that's how they behave. So these doorways of pain, one, I don't know that we always have to walk through them. I feel like there are times when I can turn away and be like, no, I'm not going that way. It's like, going on a first date with someone and going, no, thank you, I'm not going that way. So I don't think every door of pain has to be walked through. We can learn from saying no, thank you, and shutting that door. I think some doors we're going to be drawn to them again and again because it is something that we really do need to dismantle, so to speak, so that we can engage more fully with the world and with ourselves. And I think so many of these doors are sort of, trying to think how to describe this. It's like the door sort of has a person's face on it. Meaning this certain doorway of pain, right now I associate that doorway with a certain person. But in reality, that face could be any face, right? Like, meaning, and I talked about this with my therapist last night. It was like, I sidestepped this other door only to find myself at the same door with a different person. So I think you understand what I'm saying now when I say sometimes there's a door and we associate it with a person, but it really doesn't have anything to do with that person. There are some doors that have to do with certain people, and we need to stay away from those. But there are other doors that when you start to see there are quite a few faces on it, that maybe it's about the door and not the person, and to try to sort of remove the person from it and say, okay, this is a door that I've seen before, and there's a lot for me to learn here. And can I remove the person and just look at the door and look at the framework of my belief system and make it a little healthier. So, doorways of pain, totally legit things. There's also lots of other options. I suggest trying those out because you won't be better, you won't be worse for it, and you'll probably learn a lot. And then when you do find yourself at a doorway where you really do need to go through, that it's going to happen. And sometimes those doorways happen because of other people's choices in life that you've associated yourself with, and they're making a choice that's really painful. And so you just get to be with your own painful doorway, so to speak, as they make the decisions they feel are best for themselves. And learn and grow and be careful not to get stuck. My words of advice. If you keep seeing the same door, ask yourself, like, is this a habitual door? Is it time to close this door and walk away? I do believe that's a thing. If it's a habitual door and you realize, no, I actually need to learn how to walk through this one in order to have healthy relationships with myself and with others, well, then maybe take your time going through it. Don't rush it, take your time looking at it on this side. Look at the threshold, look at the doorknob, look at all the faces, see if you can identify all the faces that this doorway would serve. And then once you've identified them, then try to wash them away and what's left, right? And that's your own mental, emotional construct of this situation. And then spend some time with the parts of yourself that are hurting and that do believe that, and nurture and care for them. And then try walking through it. and know that you might need to walk through it, and then try walking backward through it. Like try to become familiar with the door in a new way, and do try not to get stuck. do try not to get stuck, because it's, as someone who has gotten stuck in doorways of pain, I'm not me when I'm stuck in a doorway of pain. And that is so painful for me. It's like a double-edged sword. It's like I'm stuck in a doorway of pain, so I'm in pain, and it's just painful to be me. And there's just plenty of pain to go around, and so much isn't real. And I don't mean it isn't, you're not feeling it. So it's hard to say those words, because as someone who's experienced a lot of pain, I don't discount any of my pain. I felt the pain I felt. I honor myself and respect myself and who I was in all these iterations. At the same time, it wasn't all, and I can't even use the word necessary, because it was necessary. Like, it all got me here. But at some point I realized I don't need it anymore. That I can learn through I have a lot more avenues of learning accessible to me than just the avenue of pain. There was a time when that was the only way. That was the only way I knew how to engage with what I would consider a more cosmic, universal, energetic, spiritual, I don't know what word you use there, godly, goddessly learning. And you can call them higher, you can call them deeper, whatever. But those teachings that require a lot of your attention. And pain used to be the only way to get my attention. I was so engrossed with making sure I was doing everything right that I had to be in a lot of pain. And it's taken a lot of pain for me to dismantle doing things right. Just yesterday I made the most fascinating decision. It's so crazy, I am becoming the old crone. And it's a little bit hilarious to me. It's also I'm a little bit intimidated by it. There are moments I sort of cackle and enjoy that I'm becoming this, and other times I'm sad. I'm like, oh, I really have fully stepped away from the maiden mother, and I'm becoming the crone. Anyway, it's kind of crazy. I wanted to say something else. And for you gentlemen out there, I hope you are stepping away from I don't know what the young man is called, the young man father, and stepping toward the elder role. Because we need some elders and crones badly, sorely, as those of us who don't have many to look up to. If you haven't read Terry Pratchett, I suggest you do. And I suggest you read The Witches. I think it's called, there's like 3 or 4 in the little series. I think there's one that's literally called Witches. Anyway, they are adorable. Terry Pratchett is brilliant with his humor. I wish I could write humor like Terry Pratchett. But Granny, there's a Granny, and Granny, his witches are so damn adorable. They're just the feistiest, most adorable, just fabulous characters ever. So they're hilarious, fun reads about fabulous crones. The Doorways of Pain. I have no idea where I'm at now in this thing, which is totally fine. I'm just going to leave it there with, may we all on our journeys, as we learn to walk through more than just, that's what I was going to say. I have so many more avenues of learning now. Like I have cultivated, it's like I've cultivated these tendrils. I'm not like an octopus. I am like a multi-octopus. I have so many tendrils that are nourished and awake and alive and reaching out into the universe. So I have many avenues of learning now. I don't have just the avenue of pain. And I think that's part of what pain is teaching us. It's like you can open up in other ways and learn in lots of ways if you deconstruct this bizarre mental construct that society has built for you. I don't even just want to blame society. I mean, familial, constructs that we're born into, racial constructs, gender constructs. I mean, name it. So, but that is my hope for all of us, that I would love to see it in my generation, and it's not happening yet, but maybe I can be the tipping point generation. Maybe it's the generation after me, that we have fabulous crones and fabulous elders, these fabulous old people serving the role that we need served. And you don't give a rat's fuck. You are just there to say, no, this is actually what it is. And you all young ones, you run around as long as you need to, but when you're ready to lift your head and look around, I'll tell you what's going on. And I wish, fortunately, I am some bizarre mix of human and spirit, because fortunately I've had a lot of spiritual guidance, because I have not had as many physical human beings as mentors in my life. Mine has mostly come from the realms I cannot see. And that has been a blessing. It's also been frustrating and confusing. And I'll leave it at that. So, blessings to you all. And may you find there are many doorways of learning besides pain. And when pain is the only way, I hope you appreciate what it's trying to show you. I don't think it's mean. I think it's trying to help. So, take care. Bye-bye.